Welcome to 39-minute conversations. Please wait for your host to begin this meeting. Your meeting is now being recorded.
Okay, can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. Are you going to, there we go.
There I am. I
Good
had
to
to
see you.
I had to reinstall Zoom because my laptop got stolen last week, and this is my first Zoom on the new laptop.
Well, I'm very honored to be christening it. I'm sorry that happened. That's
I am too.
gotta be terrible. That's awful for a writer to lose their laptop. Did you have stuff backed up elsewhere or?
I have two backup systems. I have like Dropbox, and I've got another program I use. So in one of them, the other program I pay for, I could not get it to restore, but I had everything on Dropbox. So
That's good. I thought about that. I need to do that better about that because like Final Draft does not really have like a cloud service. So you kind of have to figure that out for yourself.
it's insane. The amount of times I've left it in coffee shops, like to go to the bathroom or something, and no one has ever stolen it. And then someone broke into my rental car and smashed the window and stole my laptop bag with two laptops in it. So it was rough.
I'm sorry that happened. That sucks.
It's all good. It's all good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for being here. Before we get into it and before I give you your official introduction, I do have to get through a quick ad read. I hope that's okay. It's, very important to pay the bills here with this very real advertisement. This is a podcast where I talk to a lot of writers, not exclusively. I also talk to actors, filmmakers, comedians, people from many facets of entertainment. But as a writer myself, I end up on here talking shop with other screenwriters a lot. And conversations do cover a wide range of topics for writers, breaking in, writing routines, navigating the industry, helpful tips, good habits, etc., etc. One thing I haven't covered a lot on here yet is something that all writers practice, something that we maybe have even perfected, something that takes up more of our time and mental energy than maybe even writing itself. And that is the simple art of procrastination. And that is why this week's episode of 39-Minute Conversations is not technically presented by Marvel Snap. Marvel Snap, a turn-based card game for your phone or tablet featuring all your favorite Marvel characters and a lot that you've never heard of in your life. Wolverine, absolutely. Iron Man, you bet. Rockslide? Yeah, sure, him too, I guess. Battle head-to-head against players from all around the world. Use strategy to combine powers to dominate your opponents and lose anyway because it's hard and life is chaos. Win new cards, upgrades, and the knowledge that you've wasted a lot of time doing absolutely nothing when you probably should have been writing. That's Marvel Snap. Feel bad about how you spend your precious time, but have fun doing it. And hello, I'm Brian T. Arnold, and this is 39-Minute Conversations, a podcast about reconnecting with old friends and making new ones, but I've only got 39 minutes to do it because I will not be paying for Zoom Pro. My guest today is a screenwriter who is absolutely crushing it right now, and for some reason, he is slumming it by coming on this podcast. His credits include Stuber for 20th Century Studios, I Am Not Okay With This for Netflix, and Die Hart and Die Hart 2 Die Harter for Roku. Season 2 just came out. I watched it all yesterday. It is very, very funny. Folks, please welcome Tripper Clancy.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for joining us. I'm very happy to have you. Tripper, how do you procrastinate, or do you?
Yeah, I do. I think if I look at like a 6 or 8 hour workday, I think I try to get, maybe two good work sessions in, like maybe two good 2 hour chunks or 2.5 hour chunks. And then the rest I kind of, it starts probably by checking email, and then that leads to some other kind of things, hopping on Twitter or something. There's a lot of ways, once you get the laptop open, there's a lot of ways to kind of lose yourself. I find all of them very helpful.
I think so too. Sometimes I feel very guilty when I'm not writing, and sometimes it's like, no, this is part of it. I can convince myself that this is absolutely part of the process.
Yes. Yeah. I find there's like a ticking clock for me at the end of the day that if it's my kids are getting home from school or something where I'm just like, oh no, there's 45 minutes left before, time runs out, and I really got to clamp down and finish my work. And that's probably the most helpful thing, is when I know that the time is running out.
So you set a schedule for yourself like every day.
Yeah. I just basically, it's dictated by my kids. When it's time to hang out with them when they're home from school and stuff, that's when my work day, typically is over. So I'm trying to like cram everything in by then.
That's nice. I definitely have something I have trouble with because I'll go like weeks of like thinking about it and like, oh, I'll get to it. I'll get it on page, and then and then over 2 weeks I'll write 100 pages of just like I will procrastinate for months to get to the point where I can do that. Is kind of how I feel.
For sure. And sometimes this how it happens like when you sell something or when you land like a OWA, you will be excited, but then you're like, oh wait, I have to do the work. And
Hmm.
but it's way worse when you're not sitting in front of your computer, when you're just thinking about I have to do it. It really feels insurmountable. But then when you actually open up your laptop and start, clacking some keys, it actually, you kind of put one word in front of the other, and then eventually you do put something on the page, which is really kind of obviously what our job is supposed to be.
It is. Um, Tripper, I try to start these interviews in the same way that this podcast was kind of born out of the pandemic. It turned me into a bit of a shut-in. And I started this to kind of give my anxious brain something social and performative to do. So I want to start with how has this time been for you? How did you stay sane? How did maybe this time change you, or what did you learn about yourself?
Well, the first few months of the pandemic, I was part of a writer's room at Netflix. I'm not okay with this. We were working on a season 2 that we never got to shoot, but
Mm.
we went straight from the room itself to Zoom, and that occupied like my first several months and it was very long hours, long days, a lot of work, and trying to retrofit some of the scenes and scripts to a pandemic friendly shoot. And that I was so busy that like I kind of felt guilty that the pandemic wasn't affecting me at all. Like I felt like,
Sure.
people were going crazy and like, being indoors and stuck with their loved ones, or some people, maybe people that they thought they were loved ones, and they're like, there were a lot of breakups happening, and I felt like the work kept me uh, you know focused, and gave me something to think about each day, so I wasn't just thinking about, is the world crumbling around us.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's important. I definitely struggled with that for a little bit of trying to figure out, as I wasn't actively working on anything at that time, and I was
Yeah,
so it was definitely hard. It was hard to like make myself right when everything felt uncertain. So it was nice that you kind of had that like already like, oh, this is my job right now. I kind of have to.
totally.
Uh,
And when that stopped, then I didn't have anything to do for a little bit, and I was like, that's when it kind of hit me, like months
yeah,
later. I feel like mine was on a delay. But we've managed to figure it out. I
yeah.
guess we're a few years into it now, so we're making it work.
I want to start at the beginning. I I didn't. I was looking you up online. I found a lot of information, but I didn't. Where did you grow up? I have no idea.
I grew up in Texas,
Okay.
and all my family's still there. My wife's family is still there. And so I went to college on the East Coast, and I came back to graduate school in Texas in Austin.
Mhm.
I moved straight from Austin to LA to break in as a screenwriter.
Um, was there a movie or a TV show when you were growing up that made you like, this is what I'm gonna do? Like that opened up that turned your brain on in that kind of way?
You know, I watched a ton of movies growing up. My parents were really into movies. Um, I think even at a young age, watching like Coen Brothers for me. I mean, like I remember watching Raising Arizona when I was too young to watch that movie.
Sure.
And I just thought it was, such a roller coaster. But honestly, I didn't think of it as a career until, late in college.
Hmm.
I didn't really think of it as like a kind of a path towards making a living or being sustained, enough of a living to pay rent or a mortgage or anything else. And for most people, it's not. And honestly, it was, I probably thought it was easier than it actually turned out to be.
I think that's a fallacy a lot of us have because I definitely, yeah, I was in high school writing my first stuff and like sending it to LA. Like, this is it. This is gonna be what turned like back in the day when you printed it off and mailed it. Um, One thing that I found when I looked you up that I didn't quite realize is that we have very similar stories about how we broke in and how our careers got started.
Tell me.
You won the script pipeline competition in 2010 with a
Mhm.
script that your managers at the time didn't really know what to do with or weren't doing anything with.
Yep.
And that win led to new managers and agents. I won the script pipeline competition in 2020 with a script that my managers at the time were not doing anything with and didn't believe in. And that led to new managers and new agents. So that tripped me out when I read that. And I would love to hear about your experience sort of pre and post script pipeline, where your career was at before the competition, breaking in, what, et cetera, and then how that competition actually changed things for you.
What if I am just you 10 years in the future?
It occurred to me.
That's crazy. Well, first off, congrats
Oh, thank you.
on winning that contest. Yeah, it changed a lot for me. I think I didn't believe in script contests because I just thought they were kind of, you know, just a way for people to capitalize on struggling writers trying to break in.
Sure.
It's a money-making scheme, and I think there are plenty of those out
I was
there.
going to say there are definitely those that exist.
Yeah, and there's those that make promises that aren't real promises about who the script can get to, and those kinds of things. I think I did it because I was desperate, and because I I did have a manager, and I did feel like I was in the game, so to speak. Um, but the problem is your first manager, your second, your third, whoever it is, until you really break in and you're like making a living doing it, that person is a real gatekeeper to you, between you and the town.
Mm-hmm.
If they tell you a script is not good enough, or they don't like it, or it's not what they think they can, shop around to people, then that's it. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
happened to my script. It's like it just went on the shelf because that particular manager didn't see a way forward with it. And that's not anyone. So, it's such a subjective business. And a manager can't take out every single piece of material. They have to have some kind of taste level that they think is something is good or bad. But sometimes they get it wrong. And that's why I sent it to I think I sent it to two contests. I think it was Script Pipeline and Austin Film Festival.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think I got bounced out of AFF in the very first, like the soonest you can possibly get bounced out of a competition.
Sure.
And then I won Script Pipeline. So subjective, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, everything changed after that. It didn't change the next day, but
Sure.
over the next 6 months, I was able to quit my day job and become a screenwriter full time. So that it happened very quickly, even though it took 5.5 years before I got to that stage
Mm-hmm.
of kind of slumming it and struggling and working a day job.
Yeah, I mean, same story basically. I moved here. I did probably 7 or 8 years here working day jobs until I won a different contest first, actually, and that's how I ended up with my first reps. And same thing. I wrote. They liked that first script. It barely went out. Second script I was working on, and they just could not. They kept encouraging it to be things I didn't want it to be. Not to disparage anybody. Everybody has different tastes. But then I just was like, I feel like I'm at a loss with this thing. I feel like it's good. I'm not hearing good feedback. I sent it to the pipeline basically because I was like, I just need notes on this. Like I just need to see if
Mhm.
anybody thinks this is good. And
Yeah.
then it just happened to win and that changed everything. So it's wild how subjective this business is and how, one person championing you and finding you really does make all the difference.
It does. And I was at a point where my confidence had gotten pretty low. I mean, I think, confidence is such a strange part of this career path
Mm-hmm.
because you often have to create it for yourself. There aren't a lot of people that are out there that are going to say, "Oh my gosh, this script was amazing! Like you crushed it! Like I can't wait to get this to people." Usually that doesn't happen, and usually you're the one that's pushing your own rock up the hill. So my confidence was pretty low at that point because I had written so many specs, and none of them had panned out. I hadn't been able to sell anything or get hired for anything. So that was the break, winning that contest, that kind of like not only connected me with the right reps and eventually the right producers and everything, but it also kind of gave me the confidence to know that I can actually do this as a career.
In the same interview that I referenced earlier, you did talk about the importance of the fuck it script, which is something that I definitely agree with. I'd love to hear your perspective on what a fuck it script is and how it can be helpful when you're trying to break in.
Yeah. So for me, it's, when I came in at this, and I was writing with a partner for most of that time when I was breaking in and working a day job, and we were always thinking of like the highest concept comedy script that a studio would want to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like, you get kind of this tunnel vision on what does the studio want? What does the town want? What can I sell? And you lose track of like what you actually want to see on the screen for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I just find it's easier if if you build it, they will come in the field of dreams way. It's like you have a better chance of putting yourself on the page and seeing if someone else out there, gravitates towards it than trying to aim for some target that will move by the time that you finish the script. If you think
Mm-hmm.
every studio wants this or that, it's like by the time you finish the script, they've already been inundated with that kind of script. They don't want it anymore. They've changed their minds, or there's a new head of the studio, whatever it is. You can't aim for what you think they want. So, and that's not to say that your fuck you script is going to um, get purchased or it's going to get made. Mine didn't. Mine never got made, and
Sure.
it's but what it did do is it showed everybody who I am on the page, opened up a ton of doors, and led to my first, 6 or 7 paid writing jobs off of
Mm-hmm.
that one feature script.
That's wild. I totally agree with that. And it's the same, like I remember, I guess it was 2 years ago, people were the only thing this town wants is Ted Lasso. Everybody work on your Ted Lasso. Everybody work on your light-hearted,
Yep,
uplifting comedy. And then Squid Games was the next giant hit, which is the complete opposite. So there's no point in chasing trends. I mean, yeah, it's if you're not showing who you are on the page and you're chasing, you're always going to be chasing. You're always going to be behind, I feel like.
totally, totally. I think it's yeah, it's impossible for anyone to say don't write this thing,
Hmm.
because someone out there will write that thing and it will break through and it'll become a huge, movie in the zeitgeist everyone's talking about. And so nobody knows. Like I don't know. I'm still always learning and trying to figure things out. And like I never try to act like I'm the expert on anything, um because we still, our expectations always change, and
Hmm.
we learn things. We turn in a script, we take on a pitch, and we kind of, try to feel things out. But again, all you can do is kind of go with what you think in your gut is something that's really entertaining and interesting, and see if everyone else responds to it.
I think that's a great way to look at it. And one thing that strikes me about your career, and I do want to get into some individual projects, but just the overall sense of your career and the kind of things that you have written. There's a lot of talk in this industry about that comedy is either dying or dead. That, I mean, obviously there's still comedies on TV and there's some lower budget stuff, but
Yeah.
there's fewer at the studio level. You're someone who's had success in comedy at the studio level. So I'm curious, as somebody who writes comedy myself, what is your take on sort of the state of comedy in the industry right now, and how have you found success in what a lot of people are saying is a dying genre?
Yeah, no, it's tough. I think I remember when Stuber came out in 2019, I remember thinking this might be the last comedy that plays 3,000 theaters.
Sure. Yeah.
Like pure comedy, and it's an action comedy, I guess. It's got lots of action in it, but it's really a comedy first and foremost. And I think we've seen, and I don't know how many have come out since in the theaters, probably a couple, but it's just not what the theatrical, what the demand is out there, what the theaters think that they can sell, or the studios think they can sell to the theaters.
Hmm.
That's why comedies have mainly gone to streamers and at home viewing, which is really unfortunate because, anyone that's ever sat in a packed theater watching a comedy, the laughter is contagious. Everything is
Oh yeah.
funnier when you're watching it with a bunch of people.
I can tell you, at one point when I was a teenager, I was convinced, no disparaging this movie, but I was convinced that Adam Sandler's Mr. Deeds was the funniest movie I'd ever seen, because I saw it in a packed theater
Totally.
and it was just like, oh my God, everybody's having the best time. And I remember when it came out in DVD, I was like, Mom and Dad, you've got to see this. This is nuts. And then we watched it and I was like, oh, it's not the same. Like,
Oh, totally.
comedy is so communal. And yeah, I think that we missed that.
And so it's almost this weird thing where it's like, if you watch a comedy on Netflix by yourself, you're not going to have the same reaction you would sitting in a theater with 150 people. And so it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like maybe comedies don't feel as funny because we're watching them on streamers. And there's obviously, plenty of examples of comedies that can break through that, and you can watch them on an airplane and you're dying laughing. But for the most part, I do feel like we have to find a way to get comedies back into theaters to get that communal laughing experience again if we want to save the genre.
I agree. And let's talk about Stuber. Was that a spec, or was that something that you were brought in for?
That was a spec. That was a spec. That was, just basically how could how could you pair up a cop and an Uber driver was kind of
Sure.
the genesis of that. And I feel like um, I, I just felt like one of those things where I had been trying to write like an 80s action comedy
I was
for,
going to say it felt like a throwback to like 80s, 90s stuff. Yeah.
I'd been wanting to write like a Beverly Hills Cop or a 48 Hours, some kind of a, kind of throwback buddy comedy story, odd couple relationship. And, and, um, and, no one had really done, at the time, no one had done an Uber movie. And so, that's an example of like, I broke in with my fuck you script, but then it was that was kind of an example of like, how do I take something that I want to do, that's important to me, like an 80s action comedy, and then maybe try to fit it inside, like Trojan horse it into maybe a concept that's in the zeitgeist that resonates with people out there. And that I kind of threaded the needle on that one. And but even inside that movie, it's like I I was born and raised in Texas, but I live in LA. And so, I understand both sides or all sides of the political spectrum. And even when I wrote that movie, I was like, I want, the two main characters to be politically opposed, even though we don't really talk about politics in that movie. But I was like, this is a cool opportunity for me to like kind of put two characters against each other that are kind of like the things I experience when I'm back home for the holidays. So, that's an example of how can you put something personal into something that maybe feels a little bit bigger or more commercial.
Yeah, and I've definitely, I think that comes across in the movie, and that's something that I've, when I talk to writers, I also tend to focus on is you want something that feels personal. You want something that only you could have written. But especially when you're breaking in, if you're not putting that into something that feels bigger or more current or high concept, it's tougher to get eyes on it. Like, even if it's like a beautifully written small thing, it's still a small thing. And that's going to take, that maybe is for years into your career, or to make yourself.
And I still struggle with it. I
Sure,
find,
me too.
I find that I either think of like very, very, very tiny, small ideas that are completely me, that have no business ever getting made because they're so small, or I think of like kind of bigger ideas and I immediately lose myself in them because I'm not thinking about, what matters to me when I'm kind of, coming up, brainstorming those ideas. So it is the hardest thing. And it's, and some of the best writers and filmmakers, they are able to kind of take something very personal and package it in something that's bigger and resonates with a wider audience.
I definitely think so. And one thing, speaking of things that are bigger, Dave Bautista is the star of Stuber, and he is so funny in it. And he is really an actor who's having a moment right now, and I think people are realizing in the last couple of years how much he's really capable of. Beyond, came in as a wrestler, and now he's become a character actor who can do anything. What was it like? Was that kind of what you pictured for that role, or was that you realizing like, oh my God, this guy's crushing this?
I hadn't seen, I knew of Dave as a wrestler, and I hadn't seen much of his work as an actor, honestly, when his name first popped up. And then I remember meeting him for the first time and being like, this could be like a really amazing fit for this role because he's frankly probably larger than I imagined in that car because he's just a massive individual. But Kumail actually is not small either. So
Not these days.
Yeah, exactly. But it kind of the relationship and the between the two of them worked very well. But I feel like That was probably my first worry. I was like, this guy is, I think, is too large to play this role. But he's great, and he's obviously proven himself over, even since Stuber and beyond.
Mhm.
He's got the chops, and he's challenging himself to do all kinds of different roles. I think everyone that comes out of wrestling has kind of an axe to grind to prove that
Mhm.
they belong, and I think we've seen it with several of them that like making that transition is easy. It kind of makes you appreciate how much good acting goes into the wrestling work.
1,000%. And speaking of, that also includes Die Hard 2, which John Cena pops up in. Very funny.
Yep.
Let's talk about the Die Hards. I want to get into that before we start running out of time.
Do it.
One thing that I'm very curious about with Die Hard, I would love to hear about your perspective on, is kind of the unique and tumultuous journey that it got on just to exist and be on. I mean, every project has some kind of journey like that, but this
Right.
one starts on Quibi goes away, ends up on Roku, then there's a movie edit of the first one on Amazon,
Yeah.
and then there's a season 2 on Roku right now. As a writer on this, as the creator, are you how much are you watching from the sidelines and wondering what the heck is happening to your thing?
It's a little bit chaotic, to be honest. It's well, when Quibi started, the deal they made with creators was we're gonna air your show for 2 years, and then after that, you can do whatever you want with it. You can cut it as a feature, you can sell it somewhere else. So it was very appealing to people like Kevin, people like me, to be able to kind of recut it, even though it is the exact same cut.
Mm-hmm.
There's just no commercial breaks.
Right.
So that was kind of appealing because we thought, well, even if not people don't see it on Quibi, they can maybe see it on another platform that's a bigger platform, and that's where we're on Amazon Prime
Mm-hmm.
for the movie version. It is a little confusing to people though that saw it on both platforms, and they're like, "This feels like the same thing," and because it is exactly the same thing. Um, but I think when Roku bought Quibi's library, they kind of grandfathered that deal into it, and so they were not able to say, "Hey, wait a minute, we don't want it to be on Amazon. We want it just on Roku." So that's why it kind of ended up on like this weird place where the first one is going to Amazon as a movie, while the second one is coming out on Roku. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, if we had started with Roku originally, it probably would have been, the deal would have been structured differently. But that's just a result of kind of the strange thing that happened when Roku bought Quibi's library and kind of inherited those contracts.
And just an example of just sort of the weirdness of streaming these days and what the industry, navigating it's harder than it used
It,
to be.
it's bizarre, and you see shows. I think Westworld is coming out on Roku now because
I
it's
think
like
so.
because HBO wanted to take that off the books, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's like it's an extremely strange time in the business. I have a hard time keeping up, to be honest.
Same. Yeah, I've talked to a couple people on here who have either acted or written for shows that were on HBO Max that are just now non-existent. And
Yeah,
it's just such a weird, hard time for. I mean, I think about it from the writer's perspective, obviously,
yeah.
because that's, what I am, but also like an actor who does really good work and then is just gone. That's so weird and so like scary to think about. But before we get too much into the state of the industry, I want to keep on Die Hard for a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, it's very funny. Season 1 reminded me a lot of like a Bowfinger, but like more
Mhm.
from the perspective of the Eddie Murphy action star hero. Um, what was it? So this was something that you pitched on, right?
Yeah, there was, I think Kevin actually pitched it originally himself.
Okay.
And then there was a draft from another writer, Derek Kolstad.
Hmm.
And then I came in and kind of put my own, revamped it, and basically tried to just focus on the comedy of what life would look like if Kevin himself really was like, dying to be an action star.
Hmm.
Um, and it's for me, it all clicked when I kind of came up with the Coach Ron character in that first season.
Hmm.
I was like, as ludicrous as it is, I was like, what if there was someone who was an expert in this and they could train regular actors to be, action stars? And then what if he was like just a weird, sadistic human being?
Hmm.
And then obviously there's a lot of twists and turns in that. And that's, for me, all storytelling is like, how do you set expectations And then how do you subvert those expectations? And I feel like the short chapters or the short episodes of Quibi or Roku kind of force you to do that every 10 or 12 minutes.
Sure.
So it's like, it's not usual to have a cliffhanger every 10 or 12 minutes in a feature, but in these short episodes, it's kind of a fun exercise to be like, okay, what am I driving to right now that we can, make people think they know where it's going, and then we can pull the rug out every 10 or 12 minutes.
Which honestly is not a bad way to, even if it's not necessarily a twist every 10 to 12 minutes, you do want to keep people interested in reading. So that does sound like a fun experiment for anything that you write, is just how can you, keep it moving and keep it in a way that's, always interesting and never like, keeping people's eyes from glazing over. That's that's our entire job.
Yeah, for anyone that's ever written or struggled to write a feature script, it's like Act 2, 60, 70 pages. And, if it's not thoroughly outlined, you really get lost in the weeds where you don't have those reversals of expectations. And so it's kind of a good exercise to like try to figure out, where are my turns? Like where, within those 60 or 70 pages, where am I guiding the audience where they think it's going, and where am I switching directions to keep them engaged and entertained?
What's it like working with someone who is arguably the biggest comedy star in the world right now? That's, I mean, obviously you worked with great people on Stuber and other projects, but this is, Kevin Hart, like selling out Madison Square Garden, and how is that process?
It's great. It's great. Once cameras roll, it's like he is so good and so funny, and like whatever his riffs are, they almost always work. And I feel like there's a huge advantage if you're doing comedy to having actors who are also either amazing stand-ups or writers themselves. So like, Kumail and Stuber. In Die Hard 2, there's Kevin. There's also Ben Schwartz.
I was gonna get into Ben Schwartz. We'll talk about him.
Paula Pell, who's like a fantastic comedy writer. So it's like, that's a real advantage if you can, when you're casting, is to put great writers in the acting roles, because when they, they're going to do the first take on the script or the second take on the script, but like as they start to riff, and Eric Appel is our director on both of those Die Hards. He's so good with improv also. So it's like once you start letting them riff, and the shit that they come up with is oftentimes far superior than whatever's in the script. But my name still goes on the title page, so that's
yeah, that works out for everybody.
Yeah.
I was going to mention Ben Schwartz and Paula Pell because I'm a UCB comedy guy. I came up doing improv and stuff, so I'm always happy when Ben Schwartz pops up in anything. And he's done a lot of great work, but this feels like almost maybe the best use of him since Parks and Rec. It's exactly like his tone and speed. And was he somebody that you pictured when you were writing it, or was that just like a lucky break?
It was a kind of a lucky break. He was one of like, an archetype, I would say, that I was picturing. I try not to get too attached to a specific actor or actress when I'm writing, because, it can be helpful sometimes to like hone in on someone to like really help you focus and find that voice. But it can also be a double-edged sword where it's like, you're not going to get that actor. So you want to make sure it's not too specifically written for just that person. Yeah, he was definitely in the zone, and thrilled. So was Eric when we were able to lock him down and get him cast. Yeah, I've always found him hilarious. I've seen him live multiple times. I mean, he's just like, in watching him work, it's like, you just feel lucky because you feel like the next time around, he's going to be impossible to get, and he's going to be too busy on too many projects. So I just feel like he's, and I felt that way about our entire cast for Die Hard 2. I was like, wow, we got, we had a great casting director, and I just feel like we got lucky to be able to get everyone aligned in the same month of schedule and all show up to set. It was amazing.
Congratulations on Die Hard 2. It's very funny. I recommend it to everybody. I actually called my parents last night to be like, I know you've been looking for something funny to watch. It's a little confusing. Go to Amazon or Roku. Like, other than that, it's worth finding.
Even my agent was like, I know I've got to pony up the $20 to on demand to watch Die Harder. And I was like, no. It is free. It is totally free. It is on Roku. It's a platform. You can get it anywhere with an internet connection. So It's tough. It's tough.
It's a
TV
little,
streamers and people get confused. I get
yeah,
it.
no, I get it too, but it is sort of it is a problem that these things we should,
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, it needs to be a little clearer, I think. It might be too early to know, but do you know if there are plans for a season 3 at this point?
There were talks of a season 3. Yeah. But that's probably all I can
Fair enough.
say
I won't
about it.
ask anymore, but I hope that I
Yeah.
personally am rooting for that.
Love it.
Um, we don't have a ton of time left. I would like to get your quick thoughts on this, though. You have, in addition to all this work you do as a writer, you're also a new member mentor in the WGA, which, WGA we're going through NBA negotiations right now, for this. And there's a lot of different feelings of, there's hope, there's trepidation, there's anxiety. As a mentor, what are you hearing? What are you relaying to writers about sort of what's going on right now? And are you feeling hopeful? Are you feeling anxious? Like what's your take on everything that's happening right now?
I mean, the biggest thing I try to remind those newer members to the guild is just that, if it feels like the studios are not coming to the table with the guild, that is what happens every time.
Mm-hmm.
That is not new. It would be abnormal if the studio showed up on day one and said, tell us what you want, we'll make it work. So it's going to be a negotiation. Negotiation only works when both sides give up stuff that they don't want to give up. The guild is not going to get everything that we want, and the studios won't get everything they want. And I obviously hope that it doesn't take a strike to accomplish that. It's still a little too early to tell, but so I try to just, kind of help. There's a lot of anxiety, obviously. People worry what's going to happen. Nobody wants to be out of work. No one wants to willingly turn away a paycheck. So, I try to just remind people that we have the best people we know negotiating this. Some of our best writers in the membership, that are TV writers, feature writers. They've been in our shoes. Some of them are super successful. Some of them are, lower middle level writers that are know exactly what we are. But everybody started where we are, no matter what. And we're doing this because we want to make things better for the writers coming after us. So it's not going to be fun or easy, and but we will get through it. There will be a time when this is over.
I think that's a good message to leave that on. I'm glad that you're a mentor. I think I'm a new member myself, so it's really cool to, I think it's cool that the guild does that. And I think writers like you volunteer their time. It's very appreciated.
Do you have a mentor?
I do have a mentor.
You got to sign one?
Okay, I got to sign one. Yeah. But we can still hang out. We can still talk.
Are they doing
yeah,
an okay job?
They're doing okay. They're doing a good job, but we can still hang out. We can still talk. We have about 2.5 minutes left, so I want to give you this opportunity right here to let people know where they can follow you, plug anything you want to plug, and then after that, we'll get into like some real deep questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Twitter. It's just my full name, at Tripper Clancy. I have hot and cold streaks. I go weeks without posting sometimes, and then I'll post a bunch in a day or two. It just depends how busy I am on a project. So that's why I kind of hop off Twitter for, days at a time sometimes. But that's about it. I'm not really on the other social medias.
All right. And watch Die Hard 2 on Roku.
Yes.
Check out
Watch
Stuber.
Yes. Watch all the things.
Everything that I've mentioned, check it out. Tripper's his movies are great. His shows are great. Very honored to have you on today. Tripper, what do you think happens after we die?
Whoa.
You
really took it there.
In the last minute and a half or so, I would like to get very serious.
I mean, my honest answer is nothing. That's my honest answer. I don't know if that's a very helpful answer for this. I just feel like, we magically, luckily landed on this rock that had the right atmosphere, the right temperature, the right elements to sustain life. And the best thing we can do is try to take care of this place while we're here. But I grew up going to a Catholic school, and I feel like that was, by the time I left high school, I kind of decided that maybe that wasn't for me. So I don't put a lot of thought into the afterlife, to be perfectly honest. Do you have a better answer than that? I'm sure you do.
I was also raised Catholic. I still consider myself Christian, but I am not as churchy as I once was. I do like to believe in some sort of afterlife and some sort of return to God, the universe, conservation of energy kind of thing. The Buddhist kind of belief of like a wave returning to the ocean kind of thing. But
I love the
it
sound
is
of that.
it's right. It sounds nice. I like to reassure myself in that way.
You might be convincing me.
Okay, good.
Your meeting has ended. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to 39-Minute Conversations, hosted and produced by Brian T. Arnold. Music by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and tune in for new episodes, and don't forget to rate and review. If you didn't like what you heard, please don't do any of that. That's okay too. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. Stay safe and be well.